Vince Redmond is a licensed marriage and family therapist who started out his career in autism as a behavior technician. He is actually featured in the film Recovered. And I encourage everybody to have an opportunity to look at that film. I know they sell it on Amazon. It's a DVD, and it shows 4 kiddos at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. You get to see them when they were just starting out therapy, and then you get to see them as teenagers. They're all adults now, super fun. We keep saying we need to do an updated version of it, but Vince is one of the therapists that you see when he was just a young pup, working with one of the kiddos. Then you get to see him when that kiddo is a teenager. And of course, now we get to see Vince on a regular basis because he's a regular here. And now he's been a licensed marriage and family therapist for a long time now. So he helps us out to understand our feelings about some of the things that happen and how we make the whole family unit work. So Vince is also the director of family services at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders and does an amazing job. And I'm lucky that I get to work with him on a regular basis. So Vince, are you here?
I am. Hello, ladies. Good morning.
Good morning.
So Vince, our
topic
topic
with us today.
What's that?
So happy you could be with us today.
Thank you. It's always fun to be here. I
Yes.
appreciate you having the opportunity.
Okay, so by the way, I said Recovered is available on Amazon, but I mean the service. Like, you got to order the DVD. It is not streaming on Prime. Vince was just saying yesterday. Vince just said yesterday that has to happen, Shannon. So I got to get on that. But and everybody's saying hi to you, Vince. I had said that the topic, and we sort of talked about this with another group earlier this week. I'm hearing a lot of people who are having a lot of anxiety and kids having trouble as the world opens back up, depending on like it feels like to me the rules change on a daily basis. Nancy, I said I was at Disneyland the other day. I've been locked in my house for over a year, but I went to Disneyland after my son graduated, and I was there the last day that they had masks and social distancing, and the very next day, people kept sending us pictures. There was only, I think it was 45% capacity at Disneyland, and yet 12 hours later, they were at 100% capacity, no required masks, no social distancing. And I know people who were going on Monday and on Tuesday, they must have felt like they were in a time warp. And,
Right.
and if we're like that as adults, what's it doing to our kiddos on the spectrum, knowing what rule when? So Vince, walk us through some of the things that we can do to help our kids and to help us.
I think and you're right. I mean, I went to Disneyland a couple of weeks ago, and it was still, well, I use air quotes, it's at 35% capacity. I'm pretty confident it was not at 35% capacity. There was way more people there than I think 35% is, but that's a side note. But you're right, there's so much change right now. I mean, as of Tuesday, right, we don't know what to do. We don't know where to go, what we can do in businesses, what we can't, what the employees can, what they can't. You got Cal OSHA saying one thing, you got the governor saying something else, you got the CDC saying one thing. And then on top of that, it's summer, right? We just have that natural transition of the kids are out of school, and they're now in summertime.
I guess that's why I've been feeling this underlying stress that I can't figure out what to attribute it to.
Right. So we have everything with the pandemic, which has just kind of predominated our lives for a year and a half. But then we forget that we're also experiencing natural transitions that we've been working with and experiencing, for most of our lives. We have the summer now, so we have the weather change, we have kids going out of school. Oftentimes we have our work schedules adapt a little bit because of the kids' schedules, and then we have vacations, and now we can take vacations, sort of. Right, we didn't last year, but we kind of can now. So there's a lot of these just natural occurring changes that are coming up. So we couple that with the ever-changing COVID landscape. There's a lot of anxiety that we're feeling, and I think the first thing we want to do is check our own anxiety, see where ourselves are, because again, we set the foundation for what the environment's going to be like at home. Right? So if we're really anxious at home and we're really scattered and we're really scared, our kids are going to also feel that anxiety. All kids, right? Kids on the spectrum, kids not on the spectrum. They're going to feel that anxiety that something's not right, which is going to heighten their anxiety. And in our cases, it's going to heighten a lot of our rigid routines, rigid behaviors from our kids, rigid expectations from our kids, because their anxieties are going to be high. So right now, it's just, I think, Nancy, you kind of hit on it. It's just knowing what's going on around us, I think, will help, right?
Yeah.
It's the first step in just forgetting, because we really didn't have those traditional transitions last year. They happened, of course, summer obviously came, but with everything else going on, we really didn't do anything because we really couldn't.
Right.
But this year,
I should know by now that I have increased anxiety every summer transition because Wyatt's schedule changes so much from when he gets out of school to when I try to keep him extremely busy. And the camps are changing every week. Whether he's in school, whether he's in camp, the classes are changing every week. So it's like I have to be an air traffic controller.
right. And a lot of these are good changes, right? It's good changes. We have camps again. We have opportunities for our kids to go do stuff. We can go out again, but it doesn't change the fact that it's still change. And it's still something that our bodies, our minds have to wrap ourselves around so that we can process it, we can understand it. And like you're saying, we can navigate it, right? Who's going to go where, what times, what can we do, what can't we do? And then again, being flexible, which is even difficult for us, let alone our kids. It's extremely difficult to be flexible, right? I know the three of us, and I can imagine everybody else that's online watching now, have gotten frustrated over the last week just with changing, expectations, changing what we can and can't do, what's expected of us and what's not. So once we can understand that, we can set an environment of, just tolerance, and things are going to be okay, and positivity, and we get through this. Now we can start looking at, okay, how do we set schedules for our kids? How can we set the predictions for our kids? One thing that I always say going into summer, and I know I've said it with you ladies several times, when we go into summer, I think there's this false kind of sense of belief that, oh, we don't need to be scheduled anymore. We can just kind of free flow. Well, that doesn't work really well for our kids, as you both know. We need to stay scheduled. The schedule changes, of course. Of course, there's an increased amount of leisure time and fun and activity time, less academic time, but there still needs to be a schedule. The kids still need to be able to predict what their day is going to be like. What are they going to do next? And if we give them that schedule, we give them time to see ahead what's going to happen, because they don't do this naturally, their anxiety will go down because they're going to see.
I think that, Vince, let me just interject and say,
sure.
That's really important. And what we have is a calendar on a dry erase board that Wyatt can see. And I didn't realize how much he depended upon it until yesterday. He was accepted into a camp that had a waiting list. So where there had been summer school, he's now going to be going to camp. And he said, Mom, next week I go to camp, and the week after I go to summer school again. And I said, no, you don't. You go to camp again. But I had not changed the dry erase board. So he's obviously very dependent upon that schedule and being able to see what his schedule is going to be.
Right. And again, it kind of puts us in check, right? It's like, oh, we got to keep up with the schedule. That's why it's putting us kind of back in place, saying, oh, sorry, my bad, change it, which is good because we see that it's a functional tool. It's a functional intervention. It's a functional strategy for him to make him feel comfortable with his day, and also, to make sure that he's looking forward, right? This is a good way of helping our kids look forward to what's going to happen next in the day.
And I always want to remind people that it's not just our kiddos that deal well with these. When I used to be a stand-up comedian, I had to keep a planner, because I had to know when somebody booked me for a date, I had to know which date, and I kept a planner for a lot of years. Then when I became a mom, I didn't have a planner anymore. And I was like, I just don't know how to get things done. And somebody said, what happened to your planner? Take your planner back out And certainly when Jem was diagnosed with autism, I had a planner and 3 clipboards because I had to keep 3 different schedules and know where you needed to be. Like you said, Nancy, like you're an Army general,
Right.
deploying people different places. But now, if I don't have access to my Outlook calendar, I don't know what my day is.
Right, me too.
I can't function. And I need that visual schedule. So to make a visual schedule for our kiddos is very functional and very real world. I just like to remind everybody that it's not like we're teaching them some foreign thing. And I love that he's dependent upon that calendar, Nancy, because everybody's got something on their phone or whatever that tells them when their appointments are. So
Right.
that to me feels like, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
very much I hate using the word normal because I think normal is the setting on the dryer.
Right.
But I think it's a very common thing for people that we find that it makes us more productive to have things visually somewhere on a phone, on a computer, on a thing.
Yeah, obviously, when you don't know what's going on, you have anxiety. When you don't know what to expect, you have anxiety.
Yes.
So
ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, a big thing to take away anxiety is to know what to expect. Now, Christina Mills says her son uses a calendar at school, but she wants to have one at home, and she wanted to know where to find a good place to find a visual schedule. Do you know a place?
I love Pinterest. I love Pinterest for this. If you put in visual schedule in Pinterest, you will get more things than you know what to do with. And you can look and go, well, that one's too young for him. That one's too old for him. Because what Wyatt needs for the visual schedule, Wyatt reads, So his visual schedule is just things written on a calendar. But for little kids that don't read, you need pictures. And they have them, you can get them on your phone. There are apps that have visual schedules. Your daily planner, whether you're on Outlook or that's a visual schedule. But Pinterest is my favorite for all of those things. They have ones that you can purchase and customize that are magnetic and that go on your wall or go on your refrigerator. Some amazing people have made some amazing things so that you don't have to. Vince, do you have other suggestions?
No, and I think, and don't be afraid to make your own ideas, right? Whatever works for you and your child. I mean, you know your child better than anyone. So if there's certain things that they like or certain things that interest them, try to incorporate that as much as possible, right? I think Pinterest is a great idea. They have 1,000 different ideas, but again, don't be afraid to be creative with your child and what's going to work best for them.
Yeah, you can even do a key. Like I have camp is a different color magic marker, then school is a different color than ABA therapy in the afternoon.
I love that because it's all creative.
Right. We can be creative. We could put different artwork on it. I mean, again, it's what's going to be functional for them, what's going to attract them to it, what's going to motivate them to use it at first, right? Later, like where Wyatt is, it's turned into a functional strategy. It's turned into a functional way of feeling good and predicting his day and knowing what's next. He's really learned how to use it, which is great. But in the beginning, it's what's going to attract them to it so we can teach them how to use it. And that's where we get really creative about, if they're into superheroes, there's lots of superhero things on it. If they're into Star Wars, there's Star Wars. If they're into colors and in art, we bedazzle as the best we can. Make it look as great as we can so that they enjoy it. They look at it, they're attracted to it, and that will help them learn.
I love, they said they love it when we let you talk, Vince. And I take that very personally, because heaven knows I've overtalked everyone. But they also say that that right now, this period of time is making my son adjust to more people, and it's awful. We were so okay with distancing. He has so much stress and anxiety, and playgrounds are overfull since opening. And if a park has too many people, we leave and go to another place. I think that many people, and it's very interesting, it's not just the kiddos. I've heard parents saying, I went to Trader Joe's and I couldn't handle it. And I had to turn around and go home. There were too many people. I couldn't deal with it. Or I went here and there was nobody with masks and I couldn't, I couldn't cope. So I appreciate many families have written in and said, while this has been really hard, the COVID's been really hard in a lot of ways, that some of the kids just did better because they prefer socially distancing. How do we
Right.
get those kiddos back into life and dealing with the anxiety of that? How do we get ourselves doing that, Vince?
It's kind of like the opposite of what we did in the beginning, right? So in the beginning of the pandemic, those of us and kids that were outgoing and needed attention and needed a lot of socialization, right? That was very demanding, very difficult for them to have that taken away. But like you said, there's another subset of kids and family members where this has actually benefited them because they don't desire to be around crowds. They don't desire to be around others. They would rather isolate and just kind of do their own thing. So it's going to be the opposite now coming out, right? So we're going to need to start desensitizing those kids who have been used to being, being by themselves or being, with a very limited amount of interactions. Now, the one thing I want to warn all parents and any parent that's listening is we have to make sure that our kids aren't isolating you, that they're not keeping you in because of their fear, right? Or because of their desire. Because let's remember, a lot of times this isn't fear, this is just a desire. The kids like, like to be by themselves. They like to do their own thing. They don't see a need or a desire to have socialization, but we do. We need it. We need to get out. And part of that is slowly reintroducing socialization back with the kids. Again, going to a very busy park, going to a very busy store, no, that's going to fail for everybody. Everyone's going to be upset. But maybe we set up a play date with a neighbor and we just go out in someone's front yard, or we go to, maybe a community neighbor pool that doesn't have a lot of people there. Right? Just getting outside, getting out of the house and starting to see new environments again with a little amount of people is going to be very refreshing for everyone, right? So just going on walks again, going to a store that might not be not at the peak of its busyness, just slowly starting to get back out again, and then contriving and setting up situations where they can start interacting again with kids. Let's not forget play dates, right? I know those have been gone for a year and a half, but we have to go back to setting up controlled environments where we can have our kids start learning how to interact again.
Wyatt has his first play date. He's a little bit old for play dates now at 19, but he has his first play date in many, many months set up with his friend Brady this afternoon, and they're going to swim. And we'll do it outside. So he's very excited about that. But yeah, they're coming back. Play dates and get-togethers are coming back, aren't they?
Right. And remember, I think we kind of Shannon's example of Disneyland, right? There's just kind of this flood of that we feel that we have to go into these environments with a lot of people. And we don't. Let's start slow. Let's start with just one-to-one. Let's start with just going, starting with our play dates again and start increasing those, going outside, playing on the lawn, going back to, doing things in their backyard or your backyard, right? And just starting really small. Then we work out to a park, and then we work out to maybe an event that will involve a couple kids. Then maybe we go into the community, right? Start small, work big, right? Rather than just jumping straight into a big.
And I want to point out too that sometimes it's the opposite. Like you were saying, don't let your child's anxiety and wanting to isolate make you isolate. And I have to cop to that in my household, it has always been and continues to be the exact opposite. That it's my anxiety that I isolate my child. And, there was a time when I was diagnosed agoraphobic and couldn't leave the house while Jen was going through therapy, and I went through cognitive behavioral therapy, and the only reason why I did it was because I saw it was starting to affect him, that I wasn't going places, and that the few times that I would have a panic attack, and I would say, I need to go home, and then I watched my child do that. We were out, and he said, I don't feel right, I want to go home. It was like word for word what I would say. And I was like, oh, I can't do this to him. And so I got cognitive behavioral therapy for myself. And I've said since the beginning of the pandemic, everybody, we were all like checking in with each other and saying, how are you? Are you okay? Did you get set up at home? Can you work? Or is your family okay? We were all checking in. And I was always saying to everybody, yeah, I'm fine. I'm going to be fine no matter how long we're here. It's when we have to come back out that you're going to have to get a crowbar and a therapist. Honestly. And truthfully, my son has been the guiding force again, that he was like, it's time for us to do this. And his graduation sort of pushed me to that direction because I wasn't going to miss that. But otherwise, if he wasn't graduating, I would still be at home. And I want to point out,
I think like what you're saying, Shannon, is some of us have natural inclinations to isolate more than others. And we have to be on the lookout for that because it can become a pattern.
Absolutely. And I want to point out that Parker said, even as an adult on the spectrum, I tried going to Menards and couldn't handle the mask policy. And here's how specific it is that, everybody's anxiety is so different. Like, I don't know, Parker, is it that the wearing the mask was hard for you, or the fact that other people weren't wearing the mask? Because my husband has a hard time with being someplace for a long time wearing the mask. We didn't go out enough to get used to it. So that's been really hard for him. For me, it's harder when there are people who aren't masked. I'm totally freaked out. I'm like, let's just all put our masks on and leave it that way, which is not going to work either. So I'm curious, Parker, which is it for you? Are you having a hard time feeling claustrophobic with the mask on, or having a hard time breathing? Or are you having a hard time with other people not having masks on? Because I've heard both stories. It's a hard time, Vince. It's a really hard time.
For me, I think we spend a lot of time worrying about what other people are doing and what other people are thinking, and we're kind of looking for a rule that's telling us what to do. We're at a stage now where we have to do what's right by what we believe and what we want to do, right? Nobody can now tell you you have to or you don't. It's up to you now. If you feel more comfortable wearing a mask in public, by all means, absolutely wear it. Doesn't matter if you're vaccinated, doesn't matter if you're not. If that gives you a sense of comfort and you feel more safe, it does actually give you more layers of protection. Absolutely do it. If you feel safe without it and vaccinated, and you feel you have your protection, your internal protection, right? Then that's okay. You can now go out pretty much most places now without it. I want us to start looking at what makes us feel more comfortable and not worry about what makes someone else comfortable. Because if you feel safe, that's what's most important to you, and that's how you should proceed.
I love that. In fact, I want to read you guys something that a friend sent me the other day. It's a smidge political, and I forgive me for that, but it says, while the outside world rushes to move on, the experience of the pandemic has yet to fully leave my body. Parts of my body, my mind, my spirit are still trapped in the limbo of pandemic despair, pandemic depression, pandemic numbness, pandemic survival. I will not be pressured to move at the breakneck speed of capitalism that wants me to forget everything. I will remind myself as often as I can to move at the pace of my own healing and be attuned to my own slow and tender needs. And I think, on a very basic level, little political, but on a very basic level, it's just exactly what you were saying, Vince, about how we have to honor ourselves and move at the speed that works for us. Right. Parker says, for me, it's the uncertainty. No masks at some places, masks at others. It's the other people thing. Right. That you were just talking about.
For Parker, do what makes you feel comfortable. Wear your mask. If you feel comfortable wearing your mask, don't worry that other people aren't. You're doing what you feel now. I think now we're in it's kind of funny, right? This is what but society on a whole has been complaining about, is let us make our own choice. don't have a mandate or mandates that make that choice for us. We're now entering that stage, and that's creating anxiety, right? It's creating anxiety that we actually now do have the choice. There is no more mandate. I mean, there's a little bit, but there's not an overall mandate anymore on what we can and cannot do. It's really up to you guys, which I think is great, because we now are in charge of ourselves again, and we can do what we feel is appropriate for us, what makes us feel safe, what makes, again, and that goes with social distancing, that also goes with the amount of, group interactions we have, right? All together now, we're starting to come out of this. And as we come out, right, take it at the pace that you want to do. And I think that was what was in what you read from your friend. Take it at your pace. Nobody can push you any faster than you want to go. But now the decisions are ours, which I think is great.
Yeah,
Great.
really
Great
amazing.
advice.
And Renee says, when I run errands, I can't focus. So I have to write a to-do list every time or else I forget. Isn't it interesting how we see that when our brain is focused on other things, it's harder to focus on the things we used to focus on? I think that's a really important point too, to be gentle with ourselves.
All the time. We use visuals all the time.
Yep. All right, we're out of time here, Vince. We want to thank you, and tell people what you do at CARD and how you can be reached.
At CARD, I kind of a catch-all, really, but work with families, help families with different situations, different grievances they might have. If there's concerns, or maybe there's just a lot of, especially like a lot of what we've talked about today, a lot of confusion with what we can do and how they can move forward for the betterment of their family and betterment of their kids. I'm here to always listen and try to help as best we can. They can reach me at my email address, which is v.redmond, REDMOND, at centerforautism.com, as it just popped up on the screen. So if there's any other questions or anything that follows our meetings today or some of our other support meetings that we do, any parent can email me at any time.
Isn't that awesome? Vince is amazing. And I want to thank you for being here, Vince. We'll see you next month.
My pleasure.
And I want to thank Nancy for being here too. I want to remind everybody that on Monday, Alex Lynn will be with us. He is a self-advocate. He is the creator of Autism Rocks. And he's going to be talking about what Autism Rocks intends to do as we come out of the pandemic, because they weren't able to do a concert last year. So he'll be with us to talk about that. On Tuesday, it's Temple Grandin Tuesday. We'll be showing a best of Temple Grandin. On Wednesday, we have Dr. Doreen Grampuchet with us. On Thursday, Bonnie Yates, special education attorney, is with us. And on Friday, we're going to be covering research topics in autism. And they want to know, does Vince ever do webinars? And he does. A lot of what he does is internal at CARD, but I know he's available to speak at other things. And we could ask him to do a town hall. We do town halls every once in a while, which we open up to the entire public. So if that's, what topic would you want him to talk about? And I'll talk to him about it. Right. But in the meantime, I again want to say thank you to Nancy. I hope that everybody has a wonderful Juneteenth. We have a new holiday. I'm going to learn how to make Juneteenth gluten-free cookies today. So nice. I hope that everybody has an opportunity to celebrate that. And Father's Day this weekend, we're saluting all of the dads. And then we'll be back on Monday. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And yourselves a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye. Thanks for watching Autism Live. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.